picture this. You're in colonial America. Revolutions brewing all around you.
Oh, yeah.
Now imagine you're a young woman enslaved in this world, yearning for freedom.
Wow.
That's the story we're diving into today, the story of Elizabeth Liss.
Yeah, it's a story that really challenges how we think about, the fight for independence and how much slavery was a part of it, particularly in the North.
Exactly, and we're exploring this through an episode of the American History Hit podcast.
Okay.
They featured historian Claire Bellew, who wrote the book Espionage and Enslavement in the Revolution, all about Liss.
Right.
And get this, she uncovered Liss's manumission certificate.
Wow.
Like the actual document.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
New discoveries like that are just what make history so fascinating.
Yeah.
So to kind of set the scene, we're talking about Oyster Bay, Long Island, 1778.
Okay.
A loyalist stronghold, which was a stark contrast to all the revolutionary fervor that was kind of sweeping other parts of the colonies.
Right.
And slavery was just completely woven into New York society at that time.
Yeah. We're talking about a New York with more enslaved people than all of New England combined.
Wow.
Even more than Georgia.
Right.
And this is where we meet 17-year-old Liss,
Okay.
enslaved in the household of Samuel Townsend, a wealthy merchant.
So for Liss, the Townsend household was her entire world. Born into slavery there, just like her mother. It was all she knew. And this is the world that she was about to bravely leave behind.
Now, here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The Queen's Rangers, a loyalist military unit,
Right.
led by Colonel John Graves Simcoe, they arrive in Oyster Bay.
Okay.
So they're basically camped right there in her world.
And Simcoe, unlike many of his contemporaries, was opposed to slavery on moral grounds.
Wow, that's a twist.
Yeah.
A British officer against slavery right in the heart of this loyalist community.
Right in the thick of it. Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well, while we don't know exactly how it happened, Liss disappears around the same time the Rangers leave.
Okay, so was there any indication that they helped her or?
Well, there is actually this fascinating clue in Samuel Townsend's ledger book.
Okay.
Simcoe purchased door hinges and nails just before departing.
So could he have constructed a hiding place for Liss, within one of the ranger wagons or something?
It's speculation, but there's also a letter from Robert Townsend,
Okay.
Samuel's son, and surprisingly, a spy for George Washington
Oh, wow.
that mentions Liss's escape.
Wait, Robert Townsend the spy?
Yes.
Like the unassuming merchant?
That's him.
Operating right under the noses of the British in New York City.
Exactly.
No.
He was actually a key member of the Culper spy ring,
Wow.
which was crucial for Washington's intelligence gathering during a time when information was very scarce.
So his own son was feeding him information?
Yeah.
Talk about a family affair.
Absolutely.
With incredibly high stakes.
Definitely.
Okay, so where does Liss fit into all of this?
Well, here's where it gets even more complicated. Liss reappears in New York City,
Okay.
enslaved by a British officer.
Wait a minute. She escapes with the help of a British officer opposed to slavery.
Only to end up enslaved by another British officer in the very city where Robert Townsend is spying.
It seems like a lot of coincidences.
It's like, what are the chances?
And to add to that, Robert's actions are also a bit curious.
Okay.
He writes to his father, acknowledging Liss's escape, but he kind of suggests that, there's no chance of getting her back.
Oh, really?
He even tells his father to just consider her a dead loss.
That seems kind of callous.
It does, but Bellew uncovered records of Robert actually buying things for Liss in the city.
Oh, really?
So it implies that he knew where she was and was looking out for her.
So do you think they may have had some kind of arrangement before she even left Oyster Bay?
It's certainly possible.
I mean, he was a spy, secrecy. It was his business.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of spies, remember the Culper spy ring?
Yes.
Well, right around this time, another spy in the ring, Abraham Woodhull, mentions a woman,
Okay.
codenamed 355, joining their ranks.
And here's what's really fascinating.
He describes Agent 355 as someone with a special ability to outwit the British
Oh, wow.
and confirms her presence in New York City.
Could this be Liss?
It's definitely possible.
Her connection to Robert, her presence in the city, her ability to move around unnoticed as an enslaved person.
Right. She would have been a perfect, albeit very risky asset.
Okay, but hold on.
Yeah.
There's another twist in 1782 with the war nearing its end. Liss asks Robert to do something astonishing.
What's that?
Buy her freedom.
Wow.
Think about it. She could have escaped with the British potentially finding freedom in England or Canada.
Right.
Why choose this path?
Why come back to the system that enslaved her?
Exactly.
Well, there's another kind of shocking revelation to this story.
Okay.
Liss was pregnant,
Oh, wow.
likely fathered by a white man.
So not only did she choose to stay, but she's also bringing a child into a world where they would face immense hardships.
It was a very complex situation with limited choices available to her.
So how did Robert react to her request, especially with the possibility that the child might be his?
Well, he agreed to buy her freedom and
have...
even brought her into his own household where she gave birth to his son, Harry.
Wow, he brought her into his home.
Yeah.
That's a huge risk, given the social norms of the time.
It does suggest a deep level of concern for Liss and her child.
Yeah, and remember, he was becoming more and more involved in the anti-slavery movement.
That's right.
He even joined the New York Manumission Society.
Alongside figures like Alexander Hamilton.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's working to abolish slavery while potentially fathering a child with a woman. He helped escape from that very system.
The irony.
It's amazing.
To ensure a future for Liss and Harry, Robert arranged for them to live with a widow named Anne Charwin.
Okay.
He even made her promise that if she ever considered leaving New York or selling Liss and Harry, he had the right to buy them back.
It seems like he was really trying to do right by them.
Yeah.
But knowing this story, I doubt it goes as planned.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Oh, no.
Sadly, just a year later, Anne Charwin remarried, this time to a wealthy merchant named Alexander Robertson, and the marriage quickly fell apart. And in a shocking act of revenge, Robertson sold Liss to Charleston, South Carolina, separating her from young Harry.
Oh my, he sold her south.
Yes.
That's just devastating. What about Robert's agreement with Anne?
He did have that agreement, but it seems he'd become preoccupied with his business and kind of lost track of Liss and Harry.
Oh, wow.
What's even more poignant is that the very day Liss arrives in Charleston, Missouri, Robert joins the New York Manumission Society, an anti-slavery group that included prominent figures like Alexander Hamilton and John Jay.
So while he's championing the abolition of slavery,
Right.
the woman who may have borne his child is sold back into that very system.
Yeah, it really underscores the complex contradictions of the time and that slow and often painful pace of change.
Wow.
And to make matters even worse, the buyer in Charleston was Captain Richard Palms, the very man infamous for his role in the Boston Massacre.
Wait, Richard Palms? The one depicted in that famous painting about to strike someone with a club.
That's him.
Wow.
Historical records depict him as a man known for his volatile temper and cruel treatment of those he enslaved.
Oh my goodness, Liss's situation in Charleston must have been truly dire.
Yeah.
This is heartbreaking. It's hard to fathom what she must have endured. Meanwhile, Robert is back in New York working with abolitionists. Did he ever discover what had become of Liss?
It took 2 long years, but Robert eventually unearthed Liss's fate. He confronted Alexander Robertson, demanding every detail of the sale. He even took 4-year-old Harry from Robertson's home, returning him to Oyster Bay to live with Liss's family.
That's amazing. He seems determined to, right this wrong. But how could he possibly retrieve Liss from Charleston, especially with someone like Captain Palms involved?
It was a formidable challenge, however. Remember, Robert's family had connections to their shipping business.
Right.
He reached out to allies in Charleston who opposed slavery, but they refused to purchase Liss, believing it was morally wrong to participate in the system they were fighting against.
Yeah, that's understandable. But what about Robert himself? Couldn't he just go down to Charleston and buy her freedom?
It wasn't that straightforward. While Liss was enslaved in Charleston, New York, passed a law prohibiting the transport of enslaved people into the state.
So even if he got her out of Charleston, she couldn't legally return to New York?
Exactly. And there's another obstacle. Palms hadn't fully paid for Liss.
Oh.
He'd taken out a mortgage on her due to his financial struggles.
Wow.
So freeing her involved this complex legal and financial maze.
It seems like every step forward leads to a dead end.
But Robert was persistent. He found an ally in Charleston, a man named Adam Gilchrist, who agreed to help navigate the legal and financial complexities of buying Liss's freedom.
It's remarkable how many people were willing to risk so much to help Liss.
It speaks volumes about the growing anti-slavery sentiment of the time, even in a place like Charleston.
So Gilchrist was working on purchasing Liss's freedom, but how did she physically return to New York with that new law in place?
Remember the Bessie Roberts ship. It made regular trips between Charleston and New York.
Are you suggesting that?
Well, it's highly probable that Liss was smuggled aboard the Betsy, perhaps making an unscheduled stop in Oyster Bay en route north. These were times of clandestine operations. And remember, Robert was a man accustomed to working in the shadows.
So she's back in Oyster Bay, but is she legally free?
Not quite yet. In 1789, she's listed as quasi-free in the record of the Baptist Church in Oyster Bay.
Interesting.
The following year, the first federal census also lists her as free, working as a paid servant in a nearby mansion.
So she's openly living as a free woman despite her legal status remaining in limbo.
Precisely. It took time, but in 1803, Ballou discovered Liss's manumission certificate. At the age of 40, she was finally legally free.
That's fantastic. A moment of triumph after all those years of hardship.
It is. And there's more. 3 years later, those same Baptist Church records mention her again, this time with the notation dead.
Oh no. So she didn't have much time to enjoy her hard-won freedom.
It doesn't necessarily mean she died that year. It simply signifies she was part of the congregation when she passed. It's touching that she chose to remain in Oyster Bay, close to her family and community.
That's a lovely thought. After years of turmoil, it seems she found a sense of belonging and peace.
Yeah, it's a testament to her resilience and the deep connection she had to her birthplace despite the adversity she faced there.
What about Harry? What happened to him after Robert brought him back to Oyster Bay?
It's a harsh reminder of the realities of the time. Harry was still considered enslaved under that gradual abolition law.
Right.
And the age for enslaved men to be granted freedom had actually been raised to 28.
So even though Liss is free, her son faces years of forced servitude.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
It really underscores the uneven progress of social change, even in the aftermath of, a revolution.
Right.
But to his credit, Robert wasn't going to let Harry remain enslaved until he was 28.
So what did he do?
Well, he took action. He sold Harry to another man in Oyster Bay.
Yeah, okay.
But with a crucial stipulation.
What was that?
Harry had to be freed at 24.
Okay.
And to ensure this happened, Robert included a clause stating that if the agreement was broken, a substantial sum of money would be owed to him.
So even though he couldn't legally free Harry outright, he found a way to accelerate his path to freedom.
Exactly.
It's really commendable how much he tried to rectify things, not just for Liss, but for her son as well.
It adds another layer to his character. Wouldn't you say? A man actively involved in the anti-slavery movement, potentially the father of a child born into slavery, working tirelessly to secure freedom for both mother and son. It's a story full of contradictions.
It really is.
Yeah.
Do we know if Harry ultimately gained his freedom at 24 as Robert intended?
Well, the historical records are incomplete, so we don't have definitive proof.
Okay.
But given Robert's meticulous efforts to safeguard Harry's future, it's helpful that the agreement was honored.
It would be a fitting resolution to their story, wouldn't it? Both mother and son finding freedom despite the hardships they endured. It's a testament to their resilience and the tireless efforts of those who fought for their liberation. But we still haven't definitively answered the question that's been hanging over this entire deep dive. Was Liss really Agent 355?
Ah, yes, the million-dollar question. Did she actually play a role in the Culper spy ring?
What clues do we have? What do those pieces of the puzzle tell us?
Well, conclusive proof remains elusive.
Yeah.
We kind of have to rely on the fragments of evidence that are available and try to piece them together.
Right.
The circumstantial evidence, while not definitive, is certainly compelling.
Yeah.
Her connection to Robert, her presence in New York City at the exact time Agent 355 was active, her ability to move around undetected as an enslaved person, it all fits.
And imagine the risks she would have taken.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought the consequences would have been unimaginable.
Exactly. It would have required immense courage and dedication, regardless of her motivations.
Yeah.
Perhaps loyalty to Robert? A desire for retribution against those who had enslaved her? Or maybe a genuine belief in the fight for American independence? We may never know for sure.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? The possibility that this seemingly ordinary woman caught in the turmoil of revolution and slavery might have played such a pivotal role in shaping American history.
It reminds us that history is full of unsung heroes, individuals whose actions may have had a profound impact, but whose stories have been lost to time or intentionally obscured.
Which brings us back to the invaluable work of historians like Claire Ballou.
Oh, absolutely.
They're like detectives piecing together fragments of information, often from unexpected sources,
Yeah.
to illuminate the lives of those whose stories have been silenced or forgotten.
Their work is so crucial, not just for understanding the past, but for challenging our assumptions about who we consider heroes, who gets remembered, and whose voices deserve to be heard.
Liss's story is a powerful example of that. It reminds us that history isn't just about presidents and generals. It's about everyday people who lived, loved, struggled, and triumphed, even when their lives were deemed insignificant by the standards of the time.
And sometimes those seemingly ordinary individuals accomplished extraordinary things, often without receiving recognition for their bravery, resilience, and determination.
So, as we conclude this incredible deep dive into the life of Elizabeth Liss, what stands out to you? What's the most important thing we've learned?
For me, it's the enduring power of the human spirit. Liz faced unimaginable obstacles: slavery, war, separation from her child, being sold south to a notoriously cruel slave owner. Yet through it all, she never gave up hope. She fought for her freedom, her son's future, and perhaps even played a role in shaping the destiny of a nation. Her story is a testament to the resilience and strength that resides within us all.
Her story is truly a gift. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, even when all hope seems lost, the human spirit can triumph. It shows us that even the most marginalized individuals can have a profound impact on the world around them. What are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Elizabeth Liss's story is a call to action. Let's commit to seeking out those hidden histories, amplifying the voices of the forgotten, and honoring the legacy of those who fought for a better world, no matter the odds.
Beautifully put. And for you, dear listener, I ask, whose hidden stories will you uncover? Whose voices will you amplify? Go out there and explore, learn, and share those stories that need to be told. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging deeper into the rich tapestry of history.